This movie is more on entering data into cells. We're going to take a look at entering data into cells where the content spills over into adjacent cells. Text specifically, dealing with text when that happens. Dealing with numerical data when you're entering numbers into cells. And we're going to introduce autofit. I set up a worksheet here. I am at 250% magnification. I did that. I zoomed in by pressing the control key down and rolling the scroll wheel on the mouse. That's the quickest way to zoom in and out, just as a reminder. In A1, I have some content in the cell. The content is too wide. It's too wide for the current width of cell A1. If I arrow over into B1, B1 is blank, C1 is blank. When I go back to A1, you can see all of the content is contained within A1. It looks like that some of it's in B1 and C1. That in fact is not the case. It's just spilling over. If I go into B1 at this point and type anything, Control Enter, it'll overwrite the content that spilled over into B1, and actually you don't see anything in C1 either. I'm going to delete that. Arrow back to A1. This is a common problem when you're entering data into cells. Text or numerical data. We're going to deal with text first. One of the ways to solve this problem is to hover over the edge of column A till you get that crossbar and double click, and autofit will automatically expand the width of the column to accommodate the content. I've now got the same phrase, the same sentence, the content is too wide, copied into cells A1 to C4. And to show you that what we just did can be done to multiple columns simultaneously, I'm going to left-click column A and drag over to select A through C. From this point, I can get my crossbar on any one of the columns and double-click, and all three columns, or all columns that I have selected, will be auto-fitted simultaneously. Back to our last starting point, I want to show you that there is a way to select all columns in the worksheet and auto-fit every column within your worksheet. I'm going to left-click outside of this range and press Control A, and what that does is select the entire worksheet. You can then go up and select any one of the columns, double-click, and the worksheet will auto-fit every single column, not only the three that we see, but if we had content in other places in the worksheet, it would also auto-fit that content to be displayed within the column where it resides. I'm on the same worksheet. I've moved over to the right a bit. I'm in column S. We were talking about entering text. Now we're going to talk about entering numbers. Column S is set up with the default column width, and S4, cell S4, is set up with the number format. T4 is set up with the number format as well, but we're going to customize the column width, and I'm going to show you what is going to take place when we enter numbers into S4 and T4. The default column width currently is 8.38 characters. I'm going to enter a number that is too wide for the column to display. We know that because it's spilling over into column T, of course. Control Enter, and what happened? Column S expanded its width automatically to display the number that we entered into S4. If instead I have a default column width that I've changed, 8.38, and I'm going to make it just slightly bigger, 8.5, I'll select T4 and enter the same number, Control Enter. Column T does not expand to accommodate the width of the number that we just entered. Instead, we get sort of what looks like a railroad track. You'll also get this railroad track if you try to enter dates with a minus sign, a negative date. It's an error display. As with text, we can automatically resize the width of column T by double-clicking the edge of T and expand using autofit to display the number that we have entered into T4. So what does all this mean? It means that if you have not resized the column to be other than the default column width, that the column width will resize itself when you enter a number in a cell within that column. There is a way to adjust the default column width within the workbook that you're working in, and that is to go to the Cells group, the Format command button, and select the default width. It's at 8.38. We knew that already because we've seen that. I'm going to adjust it down to something smaller, to 3. Left-click OK. And every column that has not been changed, either with AutoFit or by me manually adjusting the column width, will change to the new default width that we've just established, 3 character spaces. I'm in the same workbook on the same worksheet. I've moved over once again a few columns. I'm in column AA. Rows work a little differently. The row height will change and adjust automatically as you increase the point size of the font. I'm going to change it to 22, and the row height automatically adjusted to accommodate that change. It works the same way with numbers. I'll adjust it to 22, and again it increases to accommodate the change. The rows, unlike the column width, where with the column width in the Format command we have an option to globally change the default column width, we don't have the same option to change the default row height. But the rows will expand and contract their height according to the point size established for both text and numbers. With columns, the columns will expand automatically to accommodate numbers unless they've been manually changed. They won't do that for text, but you can use AutoFit to adjust for that problem. This Format command does provide another way to adjust and AutoFit the row height and AutoFit the column width. So that's an introduction to entering text and numbers. We saw where we have text that sometimes spills over into adjacent cells. We can use AutoFit to correct that and expand the width of the column automatically. If we have multiple columns that we're dealing with, we can Control A in a blank part of the worksheet and select the entire worksheet and AutoFit all of the columns in the worksheet at the same time. With numbers, the columns behave a little differently. The columns will expand to accommodate the width of the number if you haven't already changed the column width to something other than the default width. If you have and you override the width of the column, you get what looks like a railroad track, which you can then use AutoFit to correct and display that number. We saw that there's a way to change the global setting for the column width. That global setting for the row height doesn't exist, but the rows we saw will automatically adjust when you increase the point size of the text or numerical data that's contained within the rows.